While his OC buddies went surfing and dating, teenager Jim Palmer said he had a different calling: to help the homeless. That was almost 40 years ago. Today, his nonprofit Orange County Rescue Mission is the county's largest private provider of services for the homeless. When he talks about homelessness, he talks from long experience. What we should and shouldn't be doing to address the homeless crisis. That's next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by...
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
All your life, people talk about what's best for you. But to most people, it's just that. Talk. Unless you're with Memorial Care, a healthcare system devoted to one important thing: what's best for you.
Great. Well, hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and I'm talking with Jim Palmer. Jim, so good to have you on. As I mentioned, you have worked with, over the years, how many homeless people have you worked with?
Wow, probably in the range of about 500,000 people. We help about 28,000 people a year that are on the verge of homeless or homeless themselves.
And you've been doing this for almost 40 years now.
Yes.
Right? Has the problem been getting worse?
It has. It's gotten a lot worse here in Orange County.
And why? But it's not just Orange County. It seems like it's everywhere.
Yeah, I think as we look out, California as a whole has been greatly impacted by Assembly Bill 109 and Prop 47 and Prop 57. We've seen
you threw out a lot of numbers.
Change.
What
Those are the propositions that let a lot of people out of jail, that lessened felonies to misdemeanors, that attract people into the crime lifestyle.
Now, you know, there's some studies like at UCI that suggest it really hasn't, that those prisoner release programs, reduced sentencing, haven't had a big impact.
Yeah, and I haven't met a police officer or a deputy that hasn't personally seen the dramatic change. And we see it as a provider when we interview people, when we do their background checks. Those numbers have skyrocketed that are coming from criminal backgrounds and things like that.
Okay, well, we are going to get into just who the homeless are, and you have some thoughts on that. You have data on that, and we'll go through that. But first, just to give people an idea of what you do, let's take a look at this video that you've produced explaining the Village of Hope.
Great.
Welcome to the Orange County Rescue Mission's Village of Hope. The Village of Hope is a faith-based emergency and transitional living facility for homeless men, women, and children. The Village of Hope is the most comprehensive facility for homeless men, women, and children in the country. It offers an entire continuum of services from outreach to independent living. As you will see, the Village of Hope does not look like a homeless shelter. It has the appearance of a college campus. We believe that if you want to restore hearts and lives, we must surround those that we help with hope and beauty. While in the program, each homeless man, woman, and child that lives on campus is referred to as a student. Students share rooms that contain beds, dressers, desks, and a full bathroom. In the first 6 to 8 months of the program, students are given volunteer work assignments. These work assignments can vary from working in the kitchen to maintaining the grounds, working in our donation warehouse, or working with children in the Parenting and Child Enrichment Center. While in the program, students are provided with 3 meals a day. All meals are served in our cafeteria here on campus. Students who work in the restaurant-style kitchen prepare and serve the food to each of those in the program. They also prepare the food we use to serve those in our homeless ministry on the streets of Orange County, which include our chili mobile that serves all throughout Orange County. The Parenting Enrichment Center is where practical, biblical, and heart-based training is provided for parents. While here, parents are taught many of the skills necessary to be successful parents for the future. The center also offers children a safe and secure environment for their enrichment and preparation for school. Our youth tutoring center is in partnership with Concordia University. College students in the Concordia program spend afternoons working with our children to help them one-on-one with their educational needs. As you can imagine, many homeless children have challenges when it comes to education. Adjacent to the Parent and Child Enrichment Center is our on-site therapy yard. These animals are transplants from our Double R Ranch located in Water Springs, California, and are tended to daily by our students in the program. They provide unconditional love and opportunity for our students to feed and care for them. Our free legal clinic is in partnership with Trinity Law School, in which we provide free legal resources and counsel to our students and those that are receiving our outreach services. Trinity Law School also operates our mobile law clinic that offers legal aid to the poor and the homeless on the streets of Orange County. All of our donations of food, clothing, and other in-kind items come through the Village of Hope through our donation drop-off area. This on-site warehouse inventories and distributes all of our in-kind donations to the various areas of the program that are most needed. In addition, all of our food boxes are managed and coordinated through our warehouse.
Wow. So, Jim, one thing that strikes me about that is it doesn't look like my conception of what a homeless shelter is supposed to be. It looks more like a hotel.
Right. You know, when I felt that initial calling to help the homeless, one thing that was really clear to me is that whatever we did needed to be beautiful, because it needed to raise the spirits of the people we're helping. And I would feel guilty if I was creating something that I didn't feel comfortable that my own family member or myself could actually stay at. Our focus and great need in Orange County has been children, homeless children. And so the idea of warehousing them and giving all the stigma that comes with that is something that we've just avoided straight out.
Even the people there, though, the homeless folks that are there, don't look like the homeless people that you saw on the riverbed or that you run into in a park.
Right.
So do you, I mean, does anybody get into your shelter, or do they have to meet certain, in other words, do you toss out the worst and only take those that are?
No, we don't take the cream off the top at all. We're actually looking for what we call the least, the last, and the lost. Those that have hit rock bottom and decided, you know what, I don't want to go on with this lifestyle. Now, you can't be a perpetrator of women or children. You can't have that kind of background to go into our program, because we do have children on all of our campuses. But other than that, we welcome everybody that wants to turn their life around.
Now, are there rules? Do you kick people out?
There are rules. There's zero tolerance for drug, alcohol use, zero tolerance for any type of abuse, physical abuse.
But don't a lot of the homeless have drug problems?
They do. They
so
do.
How do you deal with that?
Well, you know, we focus on it initially. We have our own medical clinic, our own mental health team, and they work on those addiction issues. Sometimes it means they go through a short detox outside of the Village of Hope, for instance, and then transfer straight from the detox into the Village of Hope.
Okay, well, let's take a look at some numbers, because you have, as I mentioned, you have a lot of data. So let's just look at a few charts here. And this first chart shows, and I should say this is based on nearly 4,000 homeless adults who were pre-screened just last year, 2017.
Right.
All right, so let me ask you first, what does pre-screen mean?
So we have an admissions process and a team throughout the county and at our facilities. So when someone says, I do want to find out about what you have to offer, we begin a pre-screening process. And through that process, we identify some characteristics with the population that we're dealing with.
Okay, and so in this pre-screening of nearly 4,000, 58% self-reported that they had a substance abuse problem, 33% that they had a mental illness. Let's look at another chart, this one. Now these are, it's a smaller group, 575 re-screen. Now what does that mean?
Those are the ones that decided from that first screening that they want to pursue entering into the Village of Hope or one of our other facilities.
Oh, okay, so you get like, you get 4,000 that nearly that were pre-screened, and of that, close to 600 you actually took in. What happened to those other 3,000?
They self-determine if this is the kind of program that they're looking for or not.
Okay, all right. So they kind of select you in a way.
They do, absolutely.
Okay,
it's an interview process.
Of these rescreen ones, so you go in the deeper questions then with these folks, and here's where you find out 26% living, 1 out of 4 living with family, 20% on the street or in jail. Now I find it interesting, why don't you split out street and jail?
Well, because it hadn't been asked of us in the past. We are doing that for the future because of Prop 47 and 57 and measuring those things. The county has started to do that, so we're going to start breaking that out.
So this was a new question to throw into jail, basically. Okay, and then we can see the rest there. 13% with a friend, 12 basically just living wherever they,
where they can find a place.
Find something. Okay, let's look at this. Finally, a third chart here, and again, these are the rescreened individuals. 16% a victim of domestic violence. A very small percentage human trafficking.
Yeah, that's because people that are that are trafficked don't really recognize that as a label, so they don't mention that. Later on, months into our program, they'll start saying, "Oh yeah, that happened to me. This was the situation," and then we can see that they had been trafficked.
This is one of the things I thought was most striking. Over half have children.
Yes.
So that there are homeless people with the children.
Many, and they're somewhat invisible because they're very concerned that their children will be taken away, the children can be put at harm. So this is sort of the invisible homeless, if you want to call them that, in Orange County.
Okay, now something I wanted to run by you. As you know, the United Way just did a study in conjunction with UC Irvine. We are going to have a representative of United Way on a subsequent show. Theirs was much lower. They interviewed. UC Irvine did a survey of 252 homeless. They only had like 22% alcohol or drugs, 17% mental health problems, roughly half the number that you had. Why did their percentages of substance abuse and mental health be so much lower?
Well, their sample size was only 252 homeless people. 2/3 were actually living in shelters. If you're living in a shelter, you don't want to disclose much because you're concerned you'll get kicked out. So you're not going to tell them you have a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue. Only 50 were actually living on the streets. Gallup organization recommends a sample size of at least 1,000. And in this particular case, 662 would have been the sample size that was needed for 99% confidence in the data. And as you can see in our data, we have nearly 4,000. And I think that's why we are able to get a better sample of the data.
So you're saying your numbers are better than theirs, and your numbers show twice as much of that problem. And the reason I bring this up is because we're trying to figure out who are the homeless. I mean, we really need to understand it. Now, another point in the United Way survey, basically the two biggest factors were lack of sustainable wages and a lack of affordable housing. How important are those in your opinion?
Well, since I was born, affordable housing has been a challenge in Orange County. And for the most part, for like my children, where are they going to live? When it comes to the homeless population, as you can see, the brokenness and the challenges that are dealing with, they need to be addressed. If we don't address the root cause of 58% of the homeless having an addiction issue and give them an affordable unit and hope that they're going to do fine, that doesn't work. They tried that in Salt Lake City. They found people overdosing in the apartments and dying more frequently than overdosing on the street and dying, because if you OD'd on the street, someone saw you and they rushed you to the hospital and saved your life.
So what would you do? You've been at this for a long, long time. If you had an unlimited budget and unlimited power, what would you do to address Orange County's homeless problem?
I would add 2 or 3 more Village of Hope so that you could bring people into a respectable facility in a sense. You could develop and address their actual needs that they're dealing with, be it the substance abuse, the mental health issues, the job placement issues, developing a budget, provide an 18-month program and move people off the street into those programs, but keep them in the communities throughout Orange County. It needs to be a dispersed model.
Okay, which actually isn't that what Judge Carter, the federal judge who has gotten involved in this case, I think because of lawsuits from the ACLU, but he's now the man, and in fact, this by the time this show airs, we may know more about what's going on in that process. That's what he's talking about, right? Or that he
really
would like
is.
to see as 3 regions. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, the county has sort of broken itself into 3 regions, and he's adopted that as service areas. And I think there's a lot of value to that. If it was, up to me, I would even go further than that and have some additional facilities down in South Orange County and things like that. But I realize there's a reality to this, and if you need scale, 3 major locations is probably a great idea.
Okay, you talked about reality.
Yes.
I assume you also mean political reality. And we should say you have an understanding of politics. Let's talk about that briefly, because you were an elected official, council member in Tustin.
Yes, a recovering elected official.
Okay.
So here's the challenge with homelessness: is people become very scared. They're fearful. They're fearful of safety. They're fearful of the value of their house, their investment, their community. So if the elected officials don't address that up front and find a solution, we're going to see what we've seen over the last couple months, where every time something's proposed, that community starts a recall petition at the next city council meeting to say, we're going to recall you, and then of course city council squashes all ideas.
So how do you get over that? That's the reality of where we're sitting right now?
It is.
And we can tick off the cities that there's been something proposed and they've either said hell no, or there's been opposition. Where was it? Aliso Viejo, Irvine, Huntington Beach, Garden Grove, Costa Mesa. You can go on and on.
You can. What makes it unique is that we have a federal judge that is watching and facilitating this process to try to come up with a solution. And through that has certain powers and authority, and we'll be very interested to see what that looks like.
But what do you, and you understand it because you've been a council member, what do you say to these people in the neighborhoods who, let me channel what I think a lot of people are saying. I'm not a heartless person.
Right.
I want to help the homeless, but I don't want my neighborhood destroyed. I work hard. I send my kids to school. I want to keep my park. I don't want my park looking like the Santa Ana riverbed. How do you respond to that?
Well, we have great examples of campuses that work really, really well. So we have the opportunity to show people those campuses, and in many cases they look and they said, well, we would be okay with one of those. And then if we can work out a partnership with the city to actually create something, that's great. And we have 14 campuses throughout SoCal. That's really the biggest challenge, is to try to find solutions that fit within those communities. And as you know, the density of Orange County and not having much land creates a big challenge for us. I mean, we're pretty much surrounded by the federal government when it comes to, national parks and forests and things like that.
Yeah. One of the things you talk about is 7 points. You have 7 steps. 7 steps for dealing with people. We can't go through each and every one, but let me just note that you must provide only the services and assistance that's immediately needed. Don't provide a recipient more than give them a hand up and not a handout. Make sure you give them less than assistance than they could get if they were working and employed. It sounds like a lot of tough love stuff.
It really is, and here's a great example. We were working with a small city that had an encampment near City Hall and their police department. As we started to move the families out of the tents there to clear the area for some construction that needed to happen, the first family we moved out, we moved them into a beautiful apartment. We stocked it with food. The next day, we found them back at City Hall setting up their tent, and immediately approached them and said, what happened? We got you this apartment, we paid for it. They said, well, there was nobody there handing out pizza last night. We said, well, we stocked food in the kitchen and there's a kitchenette. Oh, you have to cook it? And they said, well, there were no gas cards. Nobody was handing out gas cards. And you have to do your own laundry there. And that told the story of how we've sort of not handle this with tough love. We have people with great hearts that throw food, that go out and do the homeless laundry, all these different things. And it actually keeps an attraction to that, to where we had this family that was going to give up their apartment. Now, fortunately, we had a couple churches and the service provider go in and say, we're not doing that anymore in this location. And the family said, well, okay, we'll go back to the apartment. But I think that's part of the challenge. So we've got a lot of people with great hearts. We got a lot of people that are real fearful. They don't want a shelter near their home. And we got to figure out a way to bridge that.
Yeah. And do you think it's bridgeable?
I think it is. I think sometimes these things take a lot of time because there's a lot of fear right now. But I think this judge is going to hold people's feet to the fire, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about you, because I think folks have gotten some sense of it. We mentioned that you served one term, 4-year term on the Tustin Council, and it was your choice not to run again,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Were you just, why? Why did you decide not?
Well, you know, when I first ran, I promised to my friends, you know, before I go crazy, I'll leave elected office. And so at about that 4-year mark, I felt it was getting a little crazy. And I literally, you know, at that last meeting, looked at my watch and said, yep, it's about time. I feel it's a little crazy. I won't be running for office again. And
okay. You also have served on a presidential commission?
Yeah, I was a presidential appointee under Bush and Senate confirmed.
Bush, George W.? George
W., to oversee the Corporation for National Community Service, which is about a $1.5 billion, 125,000 staff. It was a great experience. I got to retain that into the Obama administration, so got to see 2 totally different types of administrations and the way the federal government works.
What were your impressions on the 2 different types of administrations?
Well, unfortunately, as the veil's pulled back and you get to see how Washington operates, it scares the heck out of you. You realize, wow, you know what? I need to focus my energy locally and make sure that I'm doing the most I can for my neighborhood, my community, my family. But it was really interesting because we went from a reactionary group, you know, post 9/11, trying to keep the country safe, to a lot of hippies with doctorate degrees that came in with a progressive agenda. And we sort of have seen the changes, yet it will change again under the current president.
Yeah. You also did, you ran the Orange County Housing Authority?
Yeah, so I served for about 16 years on the Housing Authority Commission that advised the county on the Housing Authority units, on homelessness. And it was challenging because back then only on average they spent like $185,000 out of general funds for homeless.
$185,000 a year.
Yeah.
What you can't even build, you can't build an efficiency.
I think it just paid for a couple staff, and as you know now, they're spending millions and millions every month to try to deal with it.
So you were involved in homelessness before it was a cool topic.
Yes. Or an overwhelming topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and you're from Orange County?
Yes, born and raised.
And I referenced at the top that even when you were a teenager, you were getting into the homeless thing?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Newport, not a wealthy family. Helped a little boy named Michael, and at the age of 7, he and his mom knocked on the door. She said, my husband committed suicide, family business is bankrupt, where do we go? And that's when I went to my teachers, my principal. I tried calling City Hall. Nobody answered my calls. I was trying to find a place for them. And they became homeless. And that's where I decided maybe somebody needs to do something.
Do you know whatever became of them?
Yes, because many years later I was finishing the House of Hope, which is our first major project for homeless women and children. I was standing on the roof. There had been a big article in the newspaper, and this fellow named Michael calls and goes, do you remember me from the Boys and Girls Club? I said, wow. Of course I do. I'm standing on the house that I wished you and your mom could have moved into.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, so he turned out okay?
He turned out okay, and his mom did well too.
Wow. Let's put up here a web address. This is for folks that they can just go to the Orange County Rescue Mission website and get all the information. See the full video, the part of which we ran, and I guess we've got about a minute left. Tell me what you think that the government and community groups are doing right when it comes to the homeless, and what aren't they getting?
Well, I think capacity. They're spending time trying to build capacity. We've seen a number of apartment complexes recently open dedicated to this population. So I think they're moving right in the housing area. We've seen the association, United Way, and others talk about 2,700 units. That's fantastic. It'll take a while, but that's good. The other side is the brokenness, the challenges that the homeless actually have when it comes to addiction and mental health. That's where the government hasn't done a great job. I know that Frank Kim, our county CEO, is very in tune with this. We've spoken about this a couple times, and we need to create more detox opportunity, more emergency mental health services.
Okay, and of course, you're a faith-based organization. Sometimes
Yes.
it gets a little tricky when it's faith-based and government-supported. Maybe we'll talk about that a little in our open mic segment, which is going to start right now. Jim, thanks so much for shedding
Rick.
light on this issue. That's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Jim Palmer. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Chapman University is a proud sponsor of Inside OC and community programming.